So for many people, Star Trek The Next Generation was their introduction to Star Trek. It's the second Star Trek show, well, although technically third, and though it's flawed in some places, it's arguably responsible for bringing Star Trek into modern television, as well as leading to 3 spin-off shows. For many years, The Next Generation, or TNG, was my favorite Star Trek show, and it was my introduction to the franchise, although technically through the Sega Genesis game. While DS9 is actually my favorite Star Trek show, TNG still has a very special place in my heart. So, as we sit down to a cup of
tea, Earl Grey, hot,
or maybe even some prune juice, let's talk about my top 10 TNG episodes. Bear in mind that this list is just my opinion, and you may or may not have different episodes in your top 10. These episodes also may be subject to change, and I think with any list like this, it changes over time for everyone. But at least at this moment in time, these episodes are counted among my top 10 TNG episodes.
I'm all alone now, sir.
Jeremy, on the Starship Enterprise, no one is alone. No one.
One of the things Star Trek does best is how it explores the different aspects of humanity. In the case of the bonding, grief is examined. Now, grief is explored in quite a few episodes throughout the franchise, but the bonding stands out to me with how much focus there is on the different aspects of grief. So, briefly recapping the episode, a Lieutenant, Marla Astor, is senselessly killed on an away team mission by a hidden explosive device. She leaves behind a 12-year-old son, Jeremy. Throughout the episode, members of the crew process Marla Astor's death in various ways. Riker and Data, who didn't know her all that well, reflect on how familiarity with the deceased affects on how intensely the loss is felt.
Maybe if we felt any loss as keenly as we felt the death of one close to us, human history would be a lot less bloody.
Worf, who actually led the away team mission, feels responsible for her death. There's an aspect of guilt to what he's feeling because he can't avenge her death.
I cannot seek revenge against an enemy who's turned to dust centuries ago. Her death was senseless. The last victim of a forgotten war.
Feeling a responsibility to Jeremy, he wants to welcome him into his family through the Klingon Roostai ceremony.
The bonding.
It is my right.
The situation hits particularly close to home with Beverly and Wesley Crusher, which reminds them of when Jack Crusher, Beverly's husband and Wesley's father, died.
I can remember the way Dad looked when he hugged me goodbye. Captain Picard's eyes when he came to tell us.
And then, of course, there's Jeremy, going through the loss of his mother and feeling a sense of loneliness. This episode even hits on the idea of what if we could go back to those happier times, but at the same time, it acknowledges that grief is a part of life and it's something we all must face. In the end, Jeremy accepts what has happened. Yeah, I know it's a short amount of time, but what do you want from an hour-long episode? Jeremy and Worf perform the Roostai ceremony to honor their mothers and become brothers, which honestly is something the writers should have explored with Worf more. I want to see Big Brother Worf!
My older brother.
While some people believe Season 3 was still trying to find its ground, I actually really like this season for these quiet, emotional episodes.
Sos G. Bedlak So.
Darmok and Gillard at Tanagra.
Sorry, Captain.
So we have the Universal Translator. It's a piece of technology in Star Trek that is both fascinating and baffling. It explains why every alien Starfleet encounters happens to speak English, but at the same time, there are questions about how it actually works. Is everyone implanted with one? Is it in the comm badge? How does it know what to translate into English and what to leave in the original language? We're looking at you, Klingons.
Tonight, we eat well.
Yaja K-O! Yaja K-O!
But ignoring all that, it's because of the universal translator that we don't see a lot of language barriers in Star Trek. I mean, sure, DS9's Sanctuary touched on this, but the problem really only lasted about 10 minutes before everybody was able to understand each other. But in this episode, we see the Enterprise crew confronted with a serious language barrier when they encounter the Tamarians. So, how does the Tamarian captain attempt to establish meaningful contact with the Federation? Why, kidnap Captain Picard, of course! He transports both Picard and himself to a planet to fight this dangerous creature, and the entire time the Tamarian captain keeps repeating the same phrase over and over again.
Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra.
Picard is able to interpret a few phrases and realizes that the Tamarians speak in metaphor and cultural references. The phrase Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra comes from a story of two warriors who face adversity together and become friends, illustrating what the Tamarian captain was attempting to do this entire episode. This episode examines languages and the importance of stories in cultures. There are themes that are universal, and it's through those similarities that people can find common ground and relate to each other, and isn't that the first step in meeting someone new? The highlight of this episode is, of course, Picard telling the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of my favorite moments in TNG and showcases Patrick Stewart's acting abilities.
Gilgamesh wept bitter tears, saying, "He who was my companion through adventure and hardship is gone forever."
This episode is wonderfully acted, heartfelt, and even bittersweet. The Tamarian captain gave his life to establish meaningful contact between his people and the Federation. This is definitely one of the best episodes in the show, and if you can sit down and watch just one episode, this is a pretty good one.
Live long and prosper.
Original series Star Trek characters don't often make appearances in TNG, which ultimately allows the newer characters to stand on their own without necessarily being overshined by a reappearance of a long-loved character. But when they do appear, it's a special occasion. The Season 3 episode Sarek features an appearance by Spock's father, Ambassador Sarek. Sarek arrives on the Enterprise for one final diplomatic mission. However, with the arrival of Vulcan's famed ambassador, tensions arise on the ship. Geordi yells at Wesley, Sarek cries at a concert, Beverly slaps Wesley, fights break out in 10 Forward, the ship is in chaos, and Wesley gets the brunt of it. As it turns out, Sarek is the source of the tension, which is caused by the early stages of Ben-Dai syndrome, which is similar to Alzheimer's disease, only it's the loss of emotional control. Determined to complete his mission, Sarek mind melds with Picard, regaining emotional control.
I am myself again.
Picard, on the other hand,
No!
experiences the full onset of Vulcan emotion. And that's where the episode shines. Not only do we see a wonderfully emotional performance from Patrick Stewart, but we also get to see what's going on underneath the surface of Sarek. And not just this episode, but undoubtedly throughout the original series era as well. We see that Sarek is a man who truly loves his family, but because he's a Vulcan, he's not allowed to express his feelings. In a sense, we get both the expansion of Vulcans as a whole, how deep their emotions are and how much they're repressed, as well as Sarek as a character.
The anguish of the man. Despair. Both
pouring out of him all those feelings. The regrets.
I know Sarek is a pretty minor character in Trek, but to look deeper into the character and see two great actors interact is a real treat and earns a spot on my list.
We shall always retain the best part of the other inside us.
I believe I have the better part of that bargain, Ambassador.
The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth.
Okay, little confession here. I'm not the biggest fan of Wesley Crusher as a character. Personally, I think the teenage character could have been written much more realistically and shouldn't have been made to look smart at the expense of the crew's intelligence. Nevertheless, the Season 5 episode The First Duty is a really good episode. Little Wesley has been at Starfleet Academy, and he and his flight team Nova Squadron get involved in a flight accident practicing a very much banned flight maneuver that resulted in the death of their teammate. Nova Squadron leader Tom Paris, Nicholas Locarno, yes, that is indeed Robert Duncan McNeil,
Pepperoni!
convinces the other team members to cover up the accident. The entire team admits certain facts during a hearing, but their testimony in combination with the video evidence raises several questions. Picard uncovers the truth and confronts Wesley with perhaps one of the most epic speeches in Star Trek.
The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth. It is the guiding principle on which Starfleet is based. Now, if you can't find it within yourself to stand up and tell the truth about what happened, you don't deserve to wear that uniform.
Ultimately, Wesley comes forward, Nick Locarno takes the rap for the team and gets expelled, and Wesley has to repeat a grade over. This episode does what the show should have done from the start, showing Wesley as human. I feel like early Wesley would have said,
I'm with Starfleet. We don't lie.
which would have felt forced in this situation. He's a teenager, the peer pressure is high, and his team is depending on him. But Perfect Wesley isn't what happened here. Here, he's conflicted, and he wants to do the right thing, but he compromises his principles for the team. He gives in to peer pressure, like a teenager does. It wasn't until Picard confronted him and twisted his arm to make the right decision that he finally tells the truth. Although who better to do that than his father? Alright, fan theories aside, even if you're not a Wesley fan, this is still a great character building episode for him.
Thank you, Captain.
You knew what you had to do. I just made sure that you listened to yourself.
This is not unlike a drumhead trial.
I know a lot of people loves the Season 2 episode Measure of a Man as a courtroom drama episode, but I actually like the Season 4 episode The Drumhead more. There's more going on than just a simple trial. It examines paranoia, guilty until proven innocent, and even how past mistakes, no matter how minor, can be brought up by certain people. Admiral Nora Satie,
Retired.
is brought in to aid Picard in an investigation for possible sabotage on the Enterprise. However, even though the investigation concludes that sabotage was simply an accident, Admiral Satie is determined to find a saboteur on the Enterprise. So clearly it's the kid who lied on his application about who his grandfather was.
On the advice of my counsel, I refuse to answer that question in that the answer might serve to incriminate me.
The Admiral suspects crewman Simon Tarsus, not because of any real evidence against him, but rather because when he filled out his application for Starfleet, going through paperwork, he said that his grandfather was a Vulcan when he was in fact a Romulan. In Satie's eyes, Simon Tarsus is guilty until proven innocent, and maybe not even then. Though Picard attempts to stop the hearing, recognizing it for what it is, a witch hunt, Satie brings up the whole Borg incident, among other things, to discredit him. In response to Satie's insinuations about Picard's loyalty, Picard quotes her own father's words about losing freedom, and she completely loses it.
First time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged. I fear that today...
How dare you!
So by the end, she's been exposed, the trial ends, and Worf and Picard contemplate about how people like her will always be with us. Sure, this is a bottle episode, there's no new sets, there's not a lot of special effects, which is probably evidence that the budget got blown somewhere else. But this episode is so well written that it proves you don't necessarily need special effects or major action sequences to make a good episode. You just need a really good script and really good actors. And that's enough reason to include it on my list.
Vigilance, Mr. Worf.
That is the price we have to continually pay.
Welcome to the afterlife, Jean-Luc. You're dead.
What started as a quick story Picard told Wesley in the Samaritan Snare turned into one of the strongest TNG episodes that examines Picard's life and the choices he's made. Facing his own death caused by his artificial heart, Picard is given the opportunity from Q to change his past. Avoid a fight with a couple of Nausicans looking to play space pool when he was a cadet, and he can keep his original heart and live. He does, and he gets to keep his heart. But by avoiding the fight, Picard ultimately finds himself in a timeline where he is no longer captain, but a lowly lieutenant. Lieutenant junior grade. That's right, even Worf outranks him now. This is indeed the darkest timeline. So rather than go through life in a blue uniform getting paid minimum, not getting paid at all, Picard decides to press the reset button, get stabbed, laugh it off, and ultimately live another day. But the whole experience causes Picard to reflect.
There are many parts of my youth that I'm not proud of. There were loose threads, untidy parts of me that I would like to remove. But when I pulled on one of those threads, it unraveled the tapestry of my life.
How many times have we wished we can go back and do things differently? But what if that one event was what made us who we are today? What if it was those experiences that gave us the friends we have, the knowledge we have, the life we have? In a way, this kind of mirrors Star Trek V's concept of needing pain.
I've made the wrong choices in my life. I turned left when I should have turned right. Damn it, Bones, you're a doctor. You know that pain and guilt can't be taken away with the wave of a magic wand. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain.
Even though the fight with the Nausicans may ultimately lead to his death, Picard's life came into focus because of it. The moral of the story is that even though we have things we may regret, they're integral to our identity, and rather than wish them away, we should grow because of them. This episode looks at a very human side of Picard, and it's a great episode. It's definitely one of the top episodes of TNG. And it earns a spot on my list, so here it is.
I would rather die as the man I was than live the life I just saw.
It's not you I hate, Cardassian. I hate what I became because of you.
While you can arguably get into any Star Trek show without having seen any of the other shows, there are a couple of TNG episodes that I would recommend before you start DS9. This is one of them. Not only does this episode introduce the Cardassians, major players on the show, but it also showcases Chief O'Brien, who would eventually become main cast on DS9. In this episode, we see the Enterprise tasked with tracking down O'Brien's former captain, Benjamin Maxwell, who has been attacking Cardassian ships. Both the Chief and Captain Maxwell are survivors of the Setlik III massacre, where the Cardassians attacked a Federation outpost staffed by mostly civilians. They both hold prejudices against the Cardassians and carry wounds from the massacre. Captain Maxwell's family was killed, and O'Brien, who joined Starfleet to be an engineer and not a soldier, had to take up arms to defend a group of women and children. While Captain Maxwell is the main source of conflict in this episode, he's shown to be a sympathetic, multi-dimensional character, struggling with what the Cardassians did to his family and being unable to accept the peace between Cardassia and the Federation. He's contrasted with O'Brien, who, while still coping with prejudices against the Cardassians, is still able to function during peace times. Even though the episode is clear about Captain Maxwell's actions, he's not flat out condemned either. He ended up being in the right, just didn't go about it the right way. We see the two characters in a scene where they sing The Minstrel Boy, one of the songs they used to sing in the past with the rest of their crew, with Captain Maxwell slowly accepting he's not going to win.
I'm not going to win this one, am I, Chief? No, sir.
This exhibits what Trek does well, the quiet character moments that pack an emotional punch with few words. Watch this episode if you're planning on watching DS9, watch it if you're just sticking with TNG. It is a great episode.
I'm looking for Ambassador Spock.
Indeed. You have found him, Captain Picard.
This was one of the first full TNG episodes I ever watched. I had a horrible day at school, I came home, and my sister and I were flipping through the channels when we saw TNG was on. This was the episode that was playing, and because of that, this episode holds a very special place in my heart. But while we might love certain episodes because of the memories rather than the actual quality of the episode, Unification is still a great episode that earns its spot at number 3. This episode is a political thriller, a family drama, and successfully features the return of familiar characters. In this two-parter, Picard must search for Spock and investigate his presence on Romulus, where he gets involved in the political intrigue that Romulans are known for. This episode features Sarek's last appearance, now in the late stages of Bendai syndrome. I said that the episode Sarek gave us a deeper look into Sarek as a character, and this episode builds upon that, specifically in reference to his relationship with Spock.
So one might as well ask we were not to run. But secretly I admired him, that proud core of him that would not yield.
We even get to see more of Spock's humanity in this episode, especially in his conversation with Data and the final scene with Picard. On the lore-building side of things, this episode also shows another side of Romulus, one that is fascinated with Vulcan ideas and wishes to reunite with Vulcan. These aren't the hostile Romulans we see throughout the show, and I really wish 90s Trek developed this idea further. With a family drama, a deeper look at legacy characters, and world building, what more can you ask of a two-part episode?
I have no regrets.
No regrets. That is a human expression.
Yes. Fascinating.
No shock that this episode finds its way to the top of most TNG episode lists, and with good reason. It's a great episode. You can probably tell by now that I love quiet character-building episodes, and this is definitely one of them. After being struck by a beam from an unknown probe, Picard is knocked unconscious and wakes up as Kamen, a man on the dying world of Catan who has been having delusions of being a starship captain. As the Enterprise crew tries to figure out what happened to him, Picard lives a lifetime as Kamen. He's married and has a couple of kids, he becomes a member of the community, he takes up playing the flute. He grows old with his wife and sees his children start their own lives, knowing that their world is dying and there's nothing any of them can do about it. Merging dream and reality, Kamen sees the launching of the probe that eventually finds Picard, revealing that the entire community that he's been living in has been gone for 1,000 years, and that the probe was designed so that their culture would not be forgotten. Yes, it's the "it was all a dream" trope, but it's done very effectively. Picard wakes up, and in a heartfelt scene, Riker reveals that after examining the probe, they only found one object inside, a flute. This is a wonderfully emotional episode from start to finish. It gives Picard a look at another life, one that took a different direction from his. It looks at the extent a civilization will go to be remembered. There's both the mystery of the probe and what it's doing to Picard, and the vignette of the life of a man from an extinct civilization. The flute score that Picard plays is one of the best known scores in Trek, and is a wonderful staple in Trek music. I can't say enough good things about this episode.
Now we live in you. Tell them of us, my darling.
You don't know, Robert. You don't know. They took everything I was.
If it's not The Inner Light, it's usually the two-parter The Best of Both Worlds that takes top billing on these kinds of lists. I like to think of the following episode, Family, as an epilogue to the beloved two-parter. While I would list The Best of Both Worlds as among the best TNG episodes, it seems rather redundant to include it in this list with Family. So, I'm going with Family for the number one spot. Sure, Family is much less action-packed and suspenseful, but it takes a closer look at the aftermath of Picard's time assimilated by the Borg. He doesn't see himself as a hero, and he doesn't want anyone to fuss over him. He even considers leaving Starfleet to work on the Atlantis project. There are some clashes he has with his brother Robert, which, while there was already tension there anyways, it indicates something deeper is going on. This all culminates in a mud fight between brothers where Picard finally breaks down, releasing all the guilt he had for his part in the Battle of Wolf 359.
I tried so hard. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't good enough. I should have been able to stop them. I should.
This was actually a big reason why I wasn't a fan of Sisko during DS9's pilot episode Emissary, because Picard too was a victim of the Borg with deep psychological damage. Unusual for an episodic show, this episode explores the consequences of the events from the previous episodes, something that could and should have happened more in TNG. And of course, the side plots are nice additional family scenes. Worf's parents come aboard the Enterprise because they were concerned about Worf after his discommendation from the Klingon Empire.
We had to come.
Our boy was in trouble.
And they're just adorable the entire time. I love them!
Of the repairs.
Sergei, it's time to go.
Yes. Yes, okay. I have all the specs and diagrams at home.
We do get to see Helena Roshenko one more time on the show, but this is the only time we see Sergei. These two are wonderful together, and we should have seen more of them. Wesley also has time with a hollow message from his father.
I can see in your face all the people I've loved in my lifetime. Your mother, my father and mother.
Yeah, especially Jean-Luc for some reason. Joking aside, this is a wonderful overall episode. I could watch this forever.
You know what? I still don't like you, Jean-Luc.
And so ends my top 10 TNG episode list. What do you think? Are there episodes that you would include in your top 10 list that aren't on mine? What are some of your favorite moments from the episodes I talked about? As always, leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends. Until next time,
Eat your soup, courtesy of a loyal establishment.